Now, the language learning app Duolingo has released data revealing that 1.5 million people have started learning Gaelic on the app since the course launched in 2019. What's behind this amazing rise in learners? Does it mean Gaelic is having a revival? I'm now joined by Colin Watkins from Duolingo. Hello, Colin.
Hello.
So, how surprising are these figures to you?
I mean, the figures are amazing. I think it was very early on at my time at Duolingo when I was told that we were developing a Gaelic course. It was round about the time that we were working on a High Valyrian course from Game of Thrones. And I thought these are two amazing things to be working on at this time. And we were sort of building up to launch these, and I think we'd originally planned it to tie in with the mod up in Glasgow, and that was our original plan to launch the course. We were delayed slightly. We launched on St Andrew's Day. I don't think we had any expectation how many people would want to learn the language. We had a sort of bit of an idea. We've launched Welsh. We had Hawaiian on the app. We had, a number of other sort of languages, but we were blown away. I think on day one we had 60,000 people sign up. By the end of the week it was 100,000 plus. By the end of the month, many more. End of the first year, over 500,000. And since then, it's been really about 500,000 a year ever since. So, end of the second year, it was just over 1 million. I'm sort of having deja vu at the moment. It's now 3 years later, and it's 1.5 million. We just got over the line in the last couple of days for the anniversary. So yeah, astounded by its success, but not surprised. I think what we've seen globally, but also here in the UK, is an interest, and particularly in the UK. I think it's funny, actually, that lots of people say to me, when I tell them that I work for Duolingo, they always say, Brits don't want to learn languages. Why would you want to learn a language? Everybody speaks English. And, that is true to a certain extent. But what we've definitely seen in our data is that is just not the case. It's demonstrated by the number of people learning Spanish and Welsh and Latin, or things like High Valyrian from Game of Thrones. I think people now see value in learning a language for, more than just work. It's travel, or it's brain training, or it's connecting with culture, or it's family and relationships. And I think that's a big part of why Gaelic's popular, is that it can sort of fulfill all of those boxes, and it can tick all of those boxes for other people.
How does it make money if you don't charge learners?
I like to describe it as, let's say there's a very famous music app that begins with S and ends in Y. If you want to listen on the free version, every X number of songs you get an ad. On our free version, that's the case. Although it's much, at the end of every lesson you might get an ad, and then you can sort of skip through. So that's one way that we make money. Another way is that we have a premium subscription, like said music ad. Whereas if you want to essentially get rid of ads, you can do. And there's a fee for that of about $6.99 a month. And the way that we sort of like to position this is, and it's funny, our founder Luis was in London a couple of weeks ago, and it's like he likes the fact that rich people in London and New York pay for Duolingo, and that means that we can offer all of these courses for free all over the world. We make money in another way, which is like in-app purchases. Duolingo is, if you've never used Duolingo and you're not familiar with Duolingo, it doesn't work in the way that you might a language app teaches you. There's a really sophisticated AI model behind what we do. So, we sometimes often get criticised for phrases like, there's a Norwegian architect in my bed, or, my cow's favourite film is Goodfellas, or, on the Welsh course, Owen's always going on about his parsnips in the content, and people, that aren't really familiar with the way that we teach often say, well, that's stupid, why would I ever need that? But actually what it's doing is, through spaced repetition, is just teaching you about sentence construction, and then you can swap out words in that sentence for something else. So, if it's, there's a Norwegian architect in my bed, it might be, there's a cow in my living room. It just teaches you. And that AI and that machine learning in the background basically personalizes each and every lesson to you. So if you're finding things too hard, we'll make it easier. If you're finding it too easy, we'll make it harder. And the reason for that is that keeps you motivated. If you're getting every question wrong, you're going to give up. And that's the biggest barrier to learning a language, is motivation. If you're finding things too easy, you're going to give it up. So we just like to keep you on that edge where it's addictive enough to keep you coming back. And another way that we do that, which we often get criticised for, is the sort of like cartoons and gamification that we use within the app. But again, that's all built on the sort of gaming community and the gaming science behind it, which is, that's actually what keeps people learning. And we know our last figure that we released is that we have 500 million users worldwide. We can look at data on a macro scale, and we can tweak things in ways which allows us to test our sort of teaching ability. You know, that's what we see that works, and that's what people keep on coming back for.
I've already become a user myself. I have a friend who is Arabic, and he not only has learned English but a bit of Gaelic, and I want to be able to pay the compliment back. But the Duolingo app, it's very comprehensive. So I thought I would just be learning phonetics, if you like. But now I'm learning what all the squiggly lines mean. It's taken me right back to the start. And pronunciation, which I hadn't quite expected. I'm going to learn a lot.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we want to do, and, you know, some courses are better than others. You know, the Arabic course is one that we definitely need to do more work.
Who are the Gaelic learners? Are they Scots? Are they around the UK? Or are they much further away?
I looked at this when I was preparing the data for this. We have Gaelic learners in every country on Earth. In every country that we're available. We even have people in Norfolk Island. So there's one person in Norfolk Island. So there's about 4 or 5. If you think of the smallest countries on Earth, we have about 1 or 2 people in each one of those. You know, I mean, as you can probably imagine, you know, the UK, the US, Australia, you know, English-speaking countries where there's a sort of expat population. We have a number of learners there. Canada, you know, there's a Gaelic-speaking community in Canada, so we have users there. So, you know, geographically, you know, those are definitely the biggest countries. But like I say, every country on Earth you can think of, there'll be a Gaelic learner there at some point doing his 5 minutes a day.
And it's not just a bounce from when you launched, it's continuing.
No, it's continuing. I mean, you know, I come back to that point, is that, you know, people say that Brits don't want to learn languages. That's nonsense. I actually think that sometimes we do this. You know, one of the things, and I'll be totally honest about this as well, you know, one of the things that I think we're reluctant to sort of address is, you know, if you're learning, let's say, French or Italian, and you go to Italy and then you want to speak, you know, you might be in a shop or whatever, people, you get that apprehension, you get that fear. So then you just revert back to English, and people cannot, you know, usually speak English. I think with languages like Welsh and Gaelic and, well, you know, even those languages, Italian and German, once you've built up a level of confidence in it, yeah, we can just give you that confidence. But like I say, the numbers have increased massively. We're now, okay, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but when we're overtaking Brazil at the moment in terms of. I'm a very competitive person, and when I joined, I think we were like 6th or 7th on the league table. We're now up there in the top 2 or 3. So, you know, we've got a long way to go. Yes.
Sorry, do you mean Duolingo UK?
Yeah. So
rather than an actual language, yeah.
Yeah. So people in the UK, you know, we definitely saw a spike after the pandemic. But actually, you know, everybody thought, oh, that must be great for Duolingo. Everybody's making sourdough and everybody's learning a language. I actually saw it as the opposite. I was like, well, you know, coming back to that motivation point, people need to be motivated in the right way. And I think if people just come in, download an app, and just try it for the first time, and they don't really know why they're doing it, you know, they're more likely to go away. And then it's much, much harder to get them back. I think what we found is that the people that joined then, a lot of them stuck with it. And then what they've done is encourage other people and said, oh, you know what, I was learning French, or I was learning Gaelic, you should give it a go. And that's how we've seen growth sort of like multiply, certainly over the last 12 months. Like I say, I'm very happy with the way things are going in the UK.
Thank you very much for taking the time to tell us about it. Thank you, Colin.
No, thank you.
That was Colin Watkins from Duolingo. And now joined on the line from Skye by Marston McEvally from Solmore Osteg. Marston, Feskerma.
Feskerma.
What do you think of what Duolingo is claiming? 1.5 million over the last few years. That's staggering for a number of Gaelic learners.
Yeah, the numbers of people starting the course have been fantastic since we launched. Really happy to see to get the headline figures like that. Obviously, that's people who have started with the course. Some of them will have finished. Some of them are still learning. We've got 450,000 active learners currently using the app, so nearly 500,000 actively learning via Duolingo, which again is great to see.
How surprised are you by these figures? Because all the government stats and censuses tell us that things are in decline.
Well, that's the thing. There's a difference between the position of Gaelic in the communities in the Highlands and the Hebrides, people using the language daily, raising kids in the language. I don't think there's any doubt that there's an interest both nationally in Scotland and internationally in learning the language. The challenge is to connect those two things together, to use one to strengthen the other, that type of thing. So I'm kind of surprised and not surprised. Since we launched the course, the uptake was very good right from the get-go. We're now 3 years on from that, and we've seen an increase kind of year on year. Part of the draw of getting Gaelic on Duolingo in the first place is because it gives you access to that worldwide audience of language learners. The Gaelic numbers are not surprising in a Duolingo context. Irish has 2 million, Welsh has over 1 million as well. So that's part of the appeal of Duolingo. Obviously, with Scottish Gaelic, there's we've got people in Scotland wanting to learn Gaelic, but we've also got a huge diaspora in Canada, particularly, but in Australia, in the United States. So there's definitely that interest there.
So I was asking Colin where all these learners were coming from, and he thought they were all over the world. He didn't think there was a country where there were no members learning. Is that your experience?
Yeah, I think obviously the main uptake is in Scotland, and then big numbers in Canada and America, where you'd expect. But yeah, they've got definitely got learners using the app. There's quite a seemingly lively Gaelic learners group in Brazil, in Argentina, obviously Australia, places like that. So yeah, there's people all over the world taking an interest. Whether that's people with Scottish heritage, as I mentioned, people who just are interested in Scottish culture. I think Scotland's got a very strong international brand, and I suppose there's an opportunity there for us who care about Gaelic to attach Gaelic to that brand, and Outlander's been very successful in doing that in the States. I think a lot of the interest there is kind of Outlander spawned. So but that's a great thing for Scotland, and it's a great thing for Gaelic, for it to be seen as part and parcel of the brand Scotland, as it were.
To a big extent, I suppose what you're saying is a lot of people are perhaps thinking, perhaps because things are more difficult in many places now, people are wondering, who am I? Where am I from? This sort of thing. Is that what the heritage link is?
Culture is obviously the reason given for the majority of people signing up to the Duolingo app. They ask you when you start what's brought you to it, but it's quite a broad category. A lot of that will be heritage, people with Scottish heritage in the diaspora. An awful lot of people in Scotland looking to get in touch with Scottish heritage and culture. There's obviously a big appeal in Gaelic culture, but I think there's probably a bit of globalisation and people wanting to find something a bit more meaningful than the kind of shortbread tin Scotland, kind of digging a bit beyond that, which is a good thing. It's important to remember in a globalised world that you can't have multiculturalism without different cultures, and it's really important that we keep Scottish culture vibrant and alive, so it can be part of that international global multiculturalism. You're limited with what you can do in an app like Duolingo, but we have really tried to give a flavour of modern Scotland, but also of the Gaelic world, as it were, of the mods of Doneydottin and of crofting and that type of thing, as well as the kind of broader Gaelic world, so Nova Scotia, the Gaelic speakers over there, not forgetting the Mi'kmaq and some of the indigenous people that Gaels encountered in Canada. So we've tried to kind of paint a picture using the limited resources of the Duolingo app that really give people that sense of culture beyond the language itself.
The course that you have devised, that's basically what's available to learners on the app.
Yeah, so they can work their way through. It's quite an extensive course. We cover quite a lot of language. We're working on improving that and reworking some of the existing content, but also on adding to it and taking learners further towards fluency. I think nobody is under the illusion that having 1.5 million people start learning Gaelic on Duolingo is going to save Gaelic, that all of those learners are going to become fluent speakers. And I suppose the challenge for us as course developers and for those of us working in other courses and learning Gaelic generally is to try and offer the opportunity for as many of those learners to reach fluency as possible. Part of that is, improving and enhancing the offering through the Duolingo app. But with Solomon Ostig, I'm involved in the Speak Gaelic project as well, which is trying to create a kind of national course supported by television and radio programmes, teaching materials for community classes, to give the best opportunity to people who have maybe started learning Gaelic through Duolingo to then take up a class locally to enhance their learning experience and ultimately to reach fluency, which is the aim for us all.
So you're not shouting, yes, it's like a Gaelic revival. Many people, of course, think that learning languages is part of, what shall I say, a pandemic bounce. Do you think it will continue?
Well, that's why the numbers, I suppose, that have just been released are so encouraging, because definitely there was a big pandemic bounce. I think people had a lot more time in their hands and were looking to keep their minds active. And I think definitely in Scotland, all the polling evidence suggests that there is a kind of latent interest in learning Gaelic. A lot of us kind of tell ourselves, I'd love to learn Gaelic one day, and the pandemic kind of gave quite a lot of people that opportunity to start. From what we're seeing, it seems that is continuing, which is great. That's the way languages work. Gaelic can be quite intimidating before you get going. Duolingo offers that easy first step on your phone. Take the first steps in learning the language, and it really does get a hold of you, grabs you by the heart and drags you in. So I think once people do take those first steps, it does seem like they're drawn to the language, drawn to the culture, and do kind of continue with it. So yeah, it's just making that experience as rewarding and enjoyable as possible is the aim.
We can only wait and hope to see how much the trend continues. Martin, thank you very much indeed.
Cheers.